Let me just... So last week you did non-spoiler.
Yeah, last week I talked about Solo in a non-spoilery way, so today we can
Nice. We can
talk about it
spoil everything.
spoilery. But I do want to say before we start, and it's really dumb that we have to talk about this, but I think we would not be it would not be a good idea to bury it till the end, and also we should probably mention it. But people need to chill out on actresses' Instagram pages. I don't know if you know anything about the
Oh man, yeah,
Kelly Marie Tran stuff, but
that's a little ridiculous.
yeah, and I mean she would be because Daisy Ridley deleted her Instagram because
Yep.
of people being just awful people, and
Yeah.
now people continue to be awful, and Kelly Marie Tran deletes all of her posts, and that really sucks. And
Yeah, and she
it sucks
left. I think
because
the description she left too, and her thing was like, hate this but still trying or something like that. Like it
right,
was just
yeah,
like, something so
it's
sad.
yeah,
It's
it's
like it's
brutal,
so.
and you know there are some really terrible racist things on there. There were some really terrible sexist things on there, and
Yeah.
misogynistic, and in general, just really objectively terrible things. And I think Star Wars is such an awesome thing to love, and there's so much good about Star Wars, but our community is such a toxic one sometimes that it's really frustrating to be a part of, and
Oh yeah.
it's
I
really a
mean,
terrible thing.
like what always winds up happening is you always wind up just saying it just way nicer than I would put it, because really at the end of the day, like, you're very diplomatic about things, and I think that's fantastic. But really at the end of the day, like, it's the same situation that we have continuously said has been a problem since we started this podcast, or let's play, or whatever you want to call it. The minority is always the loudest and dumbest, and it's the most frustrating thing, because you have this very small group of people who can make enough noise where it literally ruins things for
Right.
for other
Oh,
other people, and
absolutely.
it's just
She's a
absurd
fun
because
follow.
real.
Her pictures are awesome. Her little stories are awesome. Like, I like her Instagram. And also, like, it sucks because it invalidates, like I've seen a lot of people say, well, I mean, you should probably just have thicker skin about it. And it's like, it's not your job to dictate how someone responds to
It's not your job to dictate how
terribleness.
someone responds, and also, I don't think you understand. Like, people just say, like, "Oh, get thicker skin." That's a really easy to say when you're not on the receiving end of literally
Right,
thousands
thousands of terrible
of
things.
terrible
Yeah,
messages. You know what I mean?
it's
It's like,
awful, and there's a lot of people out there who are saying get thicker skin. There's a lot of people out there saying, well, that sucks, but I still hate Rose. Like, this isn't the time for that conversation. And
no.
the problem is, like, I don't care what you
Just,
think of
it doesn't
Rose,
matter
and
how
it
you
just
feel about the character.
right,
It
or the
doesn't matter how
writing or
you
the
feel about
story
the
or
character.
anything, or Star Wars
Yeah,
in general. Like, Star Wars is not this
exactly.
discussion. It's a discussion about basic decency, and I think that it sucks because it invalidates an otherwise cool discussion. Like, we could have been talking about Rose today, and I don't think it would be like a smart thing to do, and I don't think it would be appropriate now. But like, the fact that we can't have that discussion because people are crappy is really it's a frustrating thing, and I
It
continue
is. It
to
really
hate
is.
most people in general, but I really like, it's been a pretty
Yeah,
disheartening couple days reading all the stuff. And Mark Hamill
I feel it a
obviously has
bit.
been really cool, and he was like, you guys suck, and that's neat. And
Yeah,
there's been a lot of great support from other Star Wars related people. Ryan Johnson dropped a couple swears on his page. He's like, you guys need to stop, and like, that's really cool.
yeah,
But in general, I mean, Daisy Ridley straight quit Instagram over it before Force Awakens was even huge,
yeah.
and now we have another just unnecessary crap, and it really sucks. And it sucks because they should be having the time of their lives. Like, both Daisy Ridley and Kelly Tran, part of what makes them so cool is, like, they're so charming in their love for being in Star Wars. Like, the fact that they're so excited about it and, enjoy
Yeah.
it so purely is, like, I don't want to see that become some, jaded cynicism. I want there to be love in their hearts for the franchise, and it sucks because, I mean, you look at how long before Force Awakens even came out was John Boyega dealing with just pure racism.
Just racism.
And then you've got Kelly Tran now. You had Daisy Ridley, and I think too frequently, you know, I mean, somebody said something about Adam Driver and the defenders were out in hordes, but now you hear crickets, or you hear people trying to advise her on how to respond to this sort of thing. Like, you can't have it both ways, and it's just straight racism, and that really sucks.
It really is. It's small-mindedness and racism. It's like I said in the movie theater, you know, when the Incredibles thing came on. I've seen so much backlash over the storyline of the Incredibles because it's this whole like, oh, you know, stay-at-home dad, mom's at work, and then, you know, and then a ton of guys underneath. See, look what they're trying to do. They're trying to, you know, diminish the manliness of today and all this other stuff. And it's just like, if it's not. And,
that is
you know,
not what I said when the Incredibles trailer came on.
No, not at all.
No.
And you know, the issue is, it's like, you know, whether you like to think this way or not, you know, I really think that if that's your typical response to when you see anything that has to do with Star Wars or Marvel or just movies in general or just media in general, and you see someone who's there that you don't want to be in that position, and it happens to be a minority or a woman, I would just double check, because you more than likely are just looking at it from a very racist or
your racism
sexist
just is
point
showing.
of view.
And I think
and
it sucks, but it's weird because it's, you know, I think with Star Wars and things like it, like Harry Potter or whatever, it's really frequent that the fans forget that the art is like what the artist wants it to be, and you may as well like get over that. And I don't understand where that gets lost, because, you know, it's 2018 and you know, I think there's a lot of crap going on.
Yeah.
But in general, there's I just think that there's a desire for some reason to impose our own views on the art we're consuming. Like, if we're liberal even and we're watching something with a conservative mindset, we're like, this should be liberal for this reason. And if we're conservative and we're watching something with a liberal mindset, we're like, wow, you know, cucks. and instead, like, that's not your position. You don't get to define what the art is and what the artist wants it to be.
Exactly.
And also how other people consume it. So I don't know why there's this infatuation with like it, you know, I can't even, like, the Incredibles.
And you know what the thing,
like, that's
you know
not
what the
your
thing is,
decision.
like, there's such a big, exactly, and you know, there's such a big difference between saying, you know, I just feel like Rose's character maybe not have served this purpose, or I feel like Rose as a character did. There's such a big difference between having an issue with a character in a movie and then just being a racist or sexist person.
Right.
Like, that's like, there's like a huge distinction. Like, I have no issue with people saying they didn't like her as a character in the movie. That's fine. That's well within your right to say.
The only time I have a problem with them saying that is when it's to mitigate what she's going through right now, because people are saying, oh, well, you know, she shouldn't be having this, but she is a bad character. Like, that's not the conversation.
Like you said at the beginning of the conversation, now, because of how it's been approached, you can't even have that conversation, because, like, just as you just said, it has not, now it needs to be a conversation about, listen, you're just wrong. Right. It doesn't matter what her performance was or what you think about the character or anything like that. That
right, that's not the way we can talk about it.
For the past now. Exactly. Because, honestly, like, really the issue is just that. And you know what? If you're going to be a fan of something, be a fan of something. Like, I am the first one to criticize Star Wars. But as far as the actual characters that are in it, like, you know, the actors and things like that, like, you know, I don't know. It's like, it's indicative, like you said, it's just indicative of the world we live in, because, you know, if it was any other time, Yeah, exactly. If it was any other time, I would think to myself, would have, what's his name, Hayden Christensen or whatever, have gotten as much flack as for when he played
Well,
Anakin?
yeah, think of how much crap he went
the
to
internet.
and what Jake Lloyd went through. Like the
Yeah.
Star Wars fans literally drove Jake Lloyd crazy. And I don't want to take away from whatever his actual illness is and the fact that it probably would have manifested itself anyway. But Star Wars fans did not do him any favors. And same thing with Hayden Christensen. Like there are people who quit acting over Star Wars. Wedge, the dude who plays Wedge, had nothing to do with Star Wars for the rest of his life because he cannot stand the fans. And I mean, we're lucky that Harrison Ford isn't the same way. So it's really
and Hayden Christensen as well. Like you said, he for a while wouldn't show up to, even though we would get invites, wouldn't show up to the Star Wars celebrations. Wouldn't show up to
George
things
Lucas
like that. It
is
wasn't until
super
recently.
Bullied. Like it's really.
And that shows you
thing.
right there that there's clearly an issue with the Star Wars fans. If George Lucas, literally the god of Star Wars, is treated poorly, then you know that Star Wars fans just are unappreciative.
Right,
you know
and there's a difference between like having a creative disagreement and wanting, you know, your own sort of ideas to be what Star Wars is about. But with that, you know, doesn't come just a freedom to be a giant jerk. And
yeah, exactly.
And I don't know. I feel like sometimes, and we've talked about it before, but if you're that type of, I mean, I can't say the word fan more loosely because that's not what I would consider a fan, but if you're that type of quote-unquote fan, then you don't need to involve yourself in our conversations. So if you have anything to say that's like, you know, she should get over it or she should take it differently or anything that's less than this is straight awful, then I would recommend having that conversation on this page.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the issue that I think is that we also just live in this culture of we are so afraid to just call things right and wrong. Like, everything has to have, like, some wiggle room where there's gray area where it's like, oh, no, you know, there could be this, like, no, you're wrong. Like, if you're one of those people trolling Kelly Marie Tran,
you're not allowed to do that here. And, like, I don't want to have to banhammer people, but I think that's a pretty clear guideline is just don't be a jerk. And it shouldn't be that complicated.
But we've always, and if you've been with us even for a month, you know pretty well that we always have, you know, been pretty open about the fact that we are full on for having a all-inclusive conversation about Star Wars or whatever it is we're gonna, you know, converse about for the night. But you know, ignorance and that kind of thing is just like there's no tolerance at all for it. I have literally zero tolerance for it. So. You know, if you are, you know, if that is your stance, I really feel bad for you because I just, you know, if you're one of those people who, like, you really are, think about that woman, I'm sorry, I feel really bad for forgetting her name, but she was on SNL and she was in Ghostbusters. Yeah. Black woman.
Yeah, Leslie Jones.
But, yes, people were terrible.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's just it's terrible. really bad. And
if you're in that group at all, you know, where you then you're right. I don't really look at the page, but you know, I think it was good to at least, like you said, mention that because it is a big deal, and people should really just think about why you don't like something a little bit.
Yeah, it's unconscionable to. Yeah, it's really just not a defensible position. So I don't know. That's that.
Yeah, but it does suck. Like you said, it really sucks, and I hope that that she, as a person, you know, is doing okay. You know,
I know.
I think that's one
just
thing
want her to feel like happy. In general, she should be stoked about what she's
you know what sucks is that like she really is a nerd. Like she does love Star Wars, and she does like. You know,
and this is like her first big gig, like
just
like similarly to Daisy Ridley. But Kelly Marie Tran came from like Funny or Die. Like this is not.
Yeah.
She had almost quit acting, and she got this part, and she can't believe that she gets to act with people like Mark Hamill and the people she gets to act with.
Yeah.
And instead, we're talking about this. Like I don't want to spend. We should be talking about Solo, and I don't want to spend 15 minutes talking about something so obscene and
stupid.
Asinine.
It's just dumb.
It's just silly.
It really is stupid.
I just wish there was a way to, like, it's not a discourse I'm willing to have. Like, if you're like, oh, well, I feel that way, and I wish you would hear me out as to why. Like, that's not a conversation I'm going to have with anybody. So,
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so Yeah, that being said, guys, if that, like we said, if that's you, then that sucks. If not, then then that's awesome, and we're glad we have you here on our channel with us so we can talk about things that we actually like to talk about. Like Solo, I was lucky enough to go see it with Adam and Andy, which was awesome last night, and so it's still pretty fresh in my brain.
First time we've seen a Star Wars movie together.
Nice.
That's pretty cool.
I know, yeah, that was pretty sweet. Which is pretty ridiculous, seeing, like you said, as we've been doing this for a year now. But at least we got to see a good one together. And that being said, this is gonna be. We're about 15 minutes into the show at this point, so if you are listening, I'm just letting you know from here on out there will be spoilers about Solo. So that if you are listening somehow on another day, or you're not catching it live and you're catching up at another time, because I know some people do digest the show that way. Right now is the time where you should shut it off, because we're going to spoil it for you. So, yeah, we went and saw it yesterday, and I know Adam gave his overall non-spoilery review last week, so you guys kind of got to hear his feelings on it.
I did stick away from a lot of opinions, too, though. I didn't really talk about... Because my thing is when there's a movie coming out, I don't even want to know if people liked it. I just want to know, like, really general things about it. So I didn't... Really, I said I liked it, I guess, but I didn't really talk about, much beyond that.
All right, so I guess we'll start with the good then. It was a lot. It was a lot to digest. It was not necessarily a long movie. It just had a lot in it. So
I mean, it's not short though. I think it's 2 hours and 17 minutes. That's
true. Yeah,
that's long for like. I think we're just in this weird mode right now where movies are just long. Like comic book movies are these epic experiences, and they have like 20 characters in them, so they have to be like 3 hours long. And
right.
And Star Wars movies are similar, where they're long and long and long. So but it isn't like a short movie by any stretch.
No, not at all. And there was a lot to it. So, I guess, like I said, we'll start with the good parts of the movie, the things that the movie did well. Because I will say this: on my way to the theater, I was like doing like a little prayer in my head, like, please don't be as terrible as I'm thinking that this might be. And it wasn't actually. I was actually surprised. Very surprised by how much I did enjoy it, because I was not expecting. I was trying to go into it with, if this is terrible, that's okay, because it literally doesn't add or take away anything from the Star Wars universe.
Right.
So if it's bad, then that's fine, because I still have everything I need from Star Wars at the end of the day, so it's all right. So I was kind of going into it with that mindset, but it was good. My favorite parts, and not necessarily parts, but my favorite, I guess I should say, aspects of the movie that they touched on were and we'll probably talk about this a lot, because I know me and Adam do agree on this point, is that the three main characters, or the three big characters, Lando, Chewie, and Han, did what they needed to do to sell the movie. 100% in my eyes. They did a great job. Lando was fantastic. Donald Glover did a really, really good job. At times at times I kept like thinking to myself, like, back to Lando Calrissian and Empire and stuff, and like tying those two characters back to each other, and at no point in time did they have a disconnect where I felt like it was weird. Like,
I did think, like, audibly especially, he was perfect. Like, there were times where if your eyes were closed, he sounded just like him. I will say that there were a couple times at the very beginning of his part in the movie where it felt like Donald Glover, like, pretend, like, when you're a kid and you play Star Wars and you're like, okay, I'm Han, you're so and so, and you're so and so. It felt like he was pretending to be Lando or trying to be Lando, but there were parts where it was just like, where that was gone for me, where it was just he was Lando. But there were a couple things right at his beginning, at his introduction, where I was like, okay. Like, because I've seen too many Donald Glover things, and Carly said it too after she saw it. She was like, it was just like Mystery Team, but he was pretending to be Lando, and it was funny because
I see what you're saying.
Because that's kind of how I felt too. But especially his voice and his inflections, he did as good a job as anyone can possibly do at being Lando, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. I think
There's no one
I think
who
he
could have
nailed
done it
it.
differently.
I think he nailed it. Nobody could. I try to think of the big actors today that are out who could have filled that role, and honestly, nobody could have done it but him.
Right.
And he did a great. And like you said, really the biggest thing was the mannerisms in his voice and his presence on the screen. That charming, whatever,
right.
Swaggy Lando. He had that down pat. Especially with the capes and the outfits.
Yeah.
He did a really great job. While we're on Lando, we might as well talk about him. Overall, like I said, the character itself is great in the movie. There was some weird things about Lando, though. Like I said, this is spoilers, so there, L3, right?
Hate.
I believe L8, L3.
Yeah, hate.
L3. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I really don't like. I mean, you kind of mentioned that the main three characters are really, really strong, but the flip side of that is anyone but them is extremely weak. And I think that
exactly.
I really don't like Kira, and I really don't like L3. And it's interesting because if they were both one character, where there was either a droid that did everything Kira did, or Kira did everything L3 did, then it would have been more acceptable to me. But they were both like offensively bad characters, and that really sucks because it had the chance to be this like really cool sort of ensemble piratey movie, and instead it became like this. All right, how long do I have to suffer through them being on the screen before I can watch Han blow something up again? And
from the moment Kira was on the screen,
oh my God.
I was
out of it. And I don't even like her as an actress because I'm not a Game of Thrones fan, and that's fine. But I just think that she is just not very good, and she continues to ruin things that are cool. Like she was in Terminator, and not that Terminator would have been good with somebody else, but she was
Terminator
really
was
bad
a
in
dumpster
Terminator.
fire.
And
Terminator was
she's just
movie.
not great. And Jared actually had the point too, because we were texting about Solo after he saw it too, and he said Game of Thrones actors cannot act other than in Game of Thrones, and that's because Game of Thrones is not acting. Like you're literally just running around method acting, and I don't think that it's like a thespian's like dream. To
Peter Dinklage is probably the only
exception
in that show.
And Sean Bean
that
maybe,
I would give
but he's not really a Game of Thrones actor anymore. And I mean that's okay, but they're really good at being typecast. I'm not saying that they're bad at those characters, but they're not like your I don't know, actors if that makes any sense. And
oh yeah.
And it sucks, but I think that's like now that's just true. And
I think so. And my thing is that like I am a Game of Thrones fan, but I hate her character in the show. So like that's the thing about that's like the funny thing is that like I agree with you 100%. Like it's so funny when I found out that she was going to be the one playing her. I was kind of annoyed because she's the one character in Game of Thrones that I despise. Like I hate her. I find her character every single time. Like there's a moment where something like poignant can happen or something like that. Her acting just completely falls flat. And then not only that, but like anytime like I just feel like her character was just built up as this like basically if you've seen the show then it's pretty racy. So I feel like at a point in time her character just became more of a way to pull viewers without.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of people in that show that are there for butts, and that's fine.
Yeah,
I would actually disagree that she's one of those characters because her character obviously has a lot of gravity towards the story too. And I'm not even a Game of Thrones fan, but I just think and you can like her in Game of Thrones, you can like Game of Thrones, and that's all fine. I know Erica's probably listening to this and just seething because she's huge into Game of Thrones. But I just think that she just doesn't act well outside of that venue, and that's okay. It's just I wish she would not be in things I like.
Yeah, and specifically to Solo, she was bad.
Bad. And her character was bad, which isn't her fault, but she doesn't help, and that is her fault. And I do think that it sucks because, I mean, this is a spoiler review, but seemingly her character matters, and is going to matter like in the future, and that's kind of frustrating because I didn't need that to be the case.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel like and you know, I said it before, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine because people disagree with me all the time. But I just think it was I said going into it, I didn't want to see a love interest between Han and someone else. And within minutes into the movie, that's what happened, and I was like immediately like, and it's this girl. And it was just kind of frustrating because like I said, I'll say this, like, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do, which is I was so annoyed with seeing a love interest with Han is because I thought it was going to diminish the love interest that we saw with
later.
Leia.
Yeah, and we talked about that a lot ahead of time, like leading up to it. Yeah, I agree with that.
And then my thing was that the issue that I have now is that you didn't even do with the love interest what I kind of would think you would do, which is sow this seed in my head that Han doesn't trust being in a relationship with anybody. And that was one thing that the movie did fall flat on, where by the end I didn't feel like I didn't see enough steps for Han to become the Han that we know now.
Right. I think we expected Han to go from naive to like cynical and scoundrelly and detached. And instead we saw him
go on an awesome adventure.
Stupid to naive. Like, he did things that were stupid in the movie. And that's one of the other positive things is that the dude who played Han did way better job than I think anybody could have anticipated. One of the main things I was super nervous about with the movie was him, and he knocked it out of the park in a lot of ways. So
he did way better than I thought he was going to do.
Yeah, so kudos to him. But I do think that Han did things that were dumb, and not necessarily things that were, I don't know how to, naive. Like, we both thought he was going to make mistakes, and then that would explain why he's so, like, detached and curmudgeon-y later. Yeah. But instead, he didn't make mistakes and learn from them. He was just really, really stupid. And I think that was my main complaint about many of the characters, is that they did things that were dumb and didn't have many consequences for being dumb. Like Paul Bettany should have killed them right away. Or when he sends them off on their little hunt, like there's just so many things that Paul Bettany does that don't make any sense. And it was weak from that perspective. But unlike other movies like Rogue One, where people do stupid things and it affects my enjoyment of the movie, this movie I still enjoyed very, very much, just because it was super fun. And and it was like a swashbuckly, like I did say this last week, but it's like a Flash Gordon fun swashbuckly adventure movie, and that's really cool to me because that's what Star Wars was to me when I was a kid. And that was my biggest takeaway, is I wish that Rivers was 6 or 7 and could go see this movie with me and just watch his eyes light up when Chewie body slams somebody and people are getting thrown over it's cool in a lot of ways, and the cool stuff in it is extremely cool. It's just that the bad stuff in it is extremely bad, and that kind of sucks.
Yep. Yeah, and that's really I think if you'll get anything from tonight's episode, that's I think both of our biggest takeaway from this movie is that the things that they did right, they really did nail it, and they did a great job. But the things
the music's
that were wrong,
awesome. The Falcon is awesome. The CGI and practical effects are both awesome. Lando and Chewie too. Chewie's unbelievable. Chewie, Lando, and Han are all three really, really cool. It's just that there's some really weak spots too. Yeah, and I did feel like there was just a lot of movies sort of pigeonholed into one movie where there was a million different storylines, and that was weird.
And that was going to be my next point, is that there was a lot. There was just a lot to it, and it wasn't like you couldn't follow it. It wasn't like it was confusing or anything. It just felt like like like
It
I
didn't
said
have
last
to
night
be
when
like
we were
that.
chatting, it was like in Rogue One, I felt like we didn't travel enough. Like we didn't see enough of the galaxy. In this
Right.
one, I was almost like we just saw way too much. Like we could have done like just 3 of those planets or 4, and I would have been happy. But like I felt like we literally went everywhere within the course of like 2 hours, and every scene and every like whatever, there felt like there was a lot going on.
Which is
not
fine.
necessarily like I said, tons of dialogue or anything like that, but just it seemed like there was a lot. And like you said, that I didn't think that was necessarily a bad thing about the movie at all. It just definitely, I think it definitely could have been, like you said, could have been broken up. Like
Right.
I could have seen this being broken up into like a mini series on Netflix.
Right,
You know
and
what I
that's
mean?
part of what makes it swashbuckly is the fact that they do have so many adventures in it. Like that's what the old school, pirate movies are like, and that's
Yeah.
fine, I guess. It's just it's not really like your traditional Star Wars fare.
Yeah,
in that
but
way.
that seems like that's what these side movies are. These offshoot movies are. They're not your typical Star Wars,
Right.
movie. And you know what?
And this one is.
I was
It
talking,
feels like Star Wars, and Rogue One doesn't. I mean, Rogue One feels like a war heist sabotagey movie that happens to have some Star
Right.
Wars elements that thrown in there to make it Star Warsy. Whereas this one is a Star Wars movie with some bad elements, but it's Star Warsy. Like there's no part of it where you're watching it, you're like, oh man, I wonder what kind of movie I'm watching. Whereas if you didn't know Rogue One and you like turned it on TV and it was halfway through and you didn't know what was going on, you might not know you were watching a Star Wars movie, other than the fact that
depending on the
blasters.
that you're right. Depending on the scene and what's going on, if it wasn't for the Empire being there,
Right,
and
exactly.
if it wasn't for the fact that the Empire was the bad guy in this situation, you could literally almost I love the movie, but I do agree with you there. Like if you could literally take like Nazi Germany and put them in that
Right, and
situation,
it's the same movie.
movie wise, and it's the same movie,
Right,
exactly.
and I think that this one had a lot of, and the cool thing about it was that all the Star Wars stuff was not fan servicey. Like none of it was forced in there. It was all like integral to what was going on. And whereas in like Rogue One, the Star Wars stuff was forced in there to make it.
There
feel
was a
Star
lot
Warsy.
of that.
Like
I
there was
will
those
agree.
dudes
One of
from A
my
New
least
Hope.
favorite parts was when they ran into the guys from the cantina scene. I always
Right.
forget their name.
Yeah, those
not
guys,
Ponda Baba,
the
but
butt-faced guys, and then you've got Vader, and Vader's scene is admittedly the coolest part of Rogue One by like no comparison. But if it wasn't in the movie, it's the same movie. Like it doesn't further the movie; it just allows you to say Vader was in the movie. And whereas this movie has, Maul, and but it's necessary. You know what I mean? They have to have a big bad reveal, and
yeah.
I don't know. I didn't feel like it was forced to be Star Warsy. I felt like Star Wars fans will force it to be more heavy than it is, or something like that, because it's not like there's no gravitas to the movie. It's just about having fun. And
Exactly.
and that's fine. But I do think that a lot of people who aren't going to see it because it's not doing very well right now, a lot of the people are the people that made a decision not to see it a long time ago. They're either neckbeards who didn't like Last Jedi and aren't going to see Star Wars movies for a little while, or or they're basing their opinion off of the loudest voices in the room, and they're not going to go see it as a result of that. So I think that if you're willing to form your own opinion and you go into it with expectations of having a fun time, then you should have a fun time. And most of the people I know who are hardcore Star Wars fans like it a lot, which is interesting to me because I thought a lot of them were going to be sort of like, ugh.
I thought the same thing too, and it's funny because that's been my genuine sentiment, which is funny because like I said, we went and saw it with Andy, and I was expecting Andy not to like it. I knew he wouldn't.
Right, that's the other thing. I think a lot of people aren't liking, and not Andy necessarily, but I do think a lot of people aren't liking it because of what it looks like to not like a movie like this. They're like, oh, this is like, you know what I mean? Like this is the character they're playing is just the person who doesn't like things, like let people enjoy things type thing. And I don't know that Andy falls into that category, but I do think that there are plenty of people out there who are like, oh, it sucks, and they're adjusting their monocle. And Like I said, it's just a lot of people put a lot of effort into it, and it's clear by the finished product. It was way better than I think most of us anticipated it being.
Oh yeah, definitely. And my experience has been that most people who have great things to say about it are pretty hardcore Star Wars fans, which is surprising because, like you said, I was not expecting people who really love Star Wars to like it. I was more expecting people who don't know much about Star Wars to love it because they don't know much about Star Wars.
Right? Yeah. That part was weird to me. And then there's people out there that I know who like loved Star Wars as kids and then kind of fell off of it recently, and they didn't see most of the new movies, but they wanted to see this one because they love Han, and they loved it. So that's interesting to me too. But yeah, a lot of the people who aren't really liking it seem like the people who, and Andy said it last night, he said like Star Wars isn't my favorite thing. I don't like this movie very much, but I'm also not the biggest Star Wars nerd. And Star Wars, like hardcore nerds, seem to really, really like this movie. And I think that's cool because I think it's part of just, like I said, having fun and having that sort of imagination sandbox mentality to a Star Wars movie again.
Yeah, and I think that's what this movie did, was it did a really good job of the fact that The Last Jedi was a very serious, if not one of the most serious Star Wars movies to come out in a long time.
Right.
The Rogue One, obviously another really serious one. The Force Awakens, though, it was a lot of fun in a lot of moments. It wasn't like funny. I think it was about time that we got a Star Wars where it was like we were just getting back to having fun with Star Wars again.
And I do think that with all the movies we'll get, they'll probably give us different tones on purpose. Like, we'll probably see some Star Wars movies that are, jokey. We'll probably see some that are like westerny. We've got this one which is super swashbuckly, and I think that's probably part of the strategy. Which made sense with the characters
that we had. With the characters that they put in it, it made sense that they set the tone of the movie that way, because that's kind of that's the only really way I can see these characters interacting with each other for almost 2 hours. Is in that setting.
Way, right?
But yeah, as far as the relationships within the movie and things like that, like I said, my biggest issues with the movies were a couple of like you said, the characters weren't the big three. They were not strong, almost to a point where a couple of them were just genuinely bad.
Right, and there's too many like archetypal characters that are like top billed casts. Like Thandie Newton is useless. Like she's terrible, and she's a cool actress, and we were excited about her because she liked Star Wars, and she wore a Star Wars dress, and she was like really into being in Star Wars, and she was just like really not a good character.
I almost forgot that she was in it by the time the movie was over.
The first time I saw it, when Will and I were talking about it, that's just genuine. Exactly, and Will and I were talking about it after we saw it the first time, and we were saying all the things we disliked about it, and I totally forgot to even talk about the four-armed Ardinian guy. Like, that guy is just a Rocket Raccoon clone, and also just a useless character. So, I mean, there's too many
and that was really odd that
characters.
They give him so much dialogue to begin with just to kill him off.
Right, they just wanted a rocket.
Odd. A Rocket Raccoon, basically. And then, and the other things that I didn't necessarily enjoy, and this is kind of one of those things where it's me just being more nitpicky, but the relationship between Han and Chewie was good. Like, it was good, and I believed it, and it was cool. I think
it was one
they
of
did
the
a good
strong
job.
Points of the movie for sure.
For sure, highlighting they were friends, and they did a good job with it. However, and we talked about this a little last night, a couple issues I did have was I don't feel like they really did a good job of establishing why Chewie is so loyal to Han.
Right.
I feel like, he saved him, and that was really cool. But then after that, I feel like Han really ever does anything to really get the amount of loyalty from Chewie that he's getting.
Yeah, they have like a mutual, and we talked about it last night, but their relationship is like oxygen to both of them, where neither one of them is really the same without the other. And part of that comes from the life debt, but more than just being a debt that is like a I don't know, like a procedural thing. Like Chewie feels
Yeah.
loyalty to Han beyond just like what he's required to feel.
Yeah.
And Han feels it for Chewie too. And I don't think that this movie really made that
No.
important.
It didn't. And that being said, I will say, if you guys have time, and I've mentioned this before, if you have time, go read the Aftermath series, because the second book is called Life Debt.
Right.
And it's literally about Han and Chewie in Chewie's life debt to Han. So read that, because if you're wondering what I'm talking about, it's in there. The fact that Han goes back to Kashyyyk with Chewie years later to try to help liberate his family and his people, and what Chewie's done for Han to have that relationship with him. It's just and it's just really interesting, because it will fill out a little bit more of that feeling that I was kind of missing from those.
Right, and in the old extended
movie.
universe, it was like a big deal, their relationship. Like Han rescued Chewbacca from slavery and literally like put his life on the line to save him, and that's why Chewie's like, oh my god, this is my dude forever now. And we didn't really get that. Now, I guess to play devil's advocate, this movie exists 10 years before A New Hope, and there's a lot of opportunity to make more of them. So I don't know that they won't address it with more depth later, but but if this was supposed to establish that, it didn't do a very good job. So I don't know if it was. And again, that part of it would require a gravity that really isn't present in any part of this movie. Like, there's no part of this movie that has that sort of weight to it, good or bad. And and I think that that's fine. But if they do want to establish the depths of the relationship, then they have to get some gravity to one of those scenes. But
exactly.
But it was
we
fine.
Talked about it. Yeah, it was, and that was the thing, is that it was one of those things where, as a more in-depth Star Wars fan, I left with that. But like I said, if I was just a casual fan, their relationship would not have seemed any different to me than it would have been, somewhere else. But it's just that, knowing what they do, like you said, and we've talked about it before on the show, so I won't get too much into it, but Han and Chewie they're not just friends, they're family. And like you said, Chewie owes a life debt to Han, but Han almost sees it as like he owes a life debt to Chewie for saving him from being lonely, from being by himself, from having no one. Han isn't alone because he has Chewie. And so that he doesn't Han at no point in time ever, says to Chewie like, well, you owe me. He would never
that's
say
the thing.
that to him,
He would never cash
feels.
in. Like, it's just they have like a mutual
because he doesn't
thing.
feel like he owes him. It's just like it's one of those things where it's you saved me and I saved you, and because how many times did Han repay that, or did Chewie repay that by saving Han's life? Like, Chewie could have left a long time ago if it was just about a debt that he needed to repay, because he saved Han's life 1,000 times. So that was just my only thing about their relationship. But like I said, it didn't take anything away from the movie, and I didn't feel like it made the movie any less watchable at all. In fact, it was one of the best parts of the movie, was their friendship and those
it was really cool, and their relationship and their give and take and back and forth was really, really awesome, and and better than the relationship between any other two characters in the movie.
Yes, it should have been.
Oh, absolutely, that should have been the focus. And if that was the only part of the movie that was on screen, then I would have been down. So I think that. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and I was going to say, the only other slightly disappointing thing about Chewie, while we're talking about him, is just I thought that other Wookiee was his family. The other Wookiees didn't have to be
Wookiees. They like the fact that he went off to rescue them, and Han sort of gave him the means to do so is cool. But they could have been literally anything, and it might have had the same weight, if not a little bit more. And I agree with that. If it was going to be more Wookiees, I don't know why it wouldn't have been his family.
Yeah.
We're getting blown up
Kylo
right
was so
now.
OP.
What's happening?
Yeah, I was gonna say we've been having like a couple good matches.
No, I mean I've been getting like comments, but it's a guy asking us to play.
About the scholastic thing. That was really awesome, man. But yeah, so that like you said, Chewie and Han's relationship, that was a little weird. I felt like Lando's relationship with his robot was kind of odd.
Yeah, if she was a person or an alien or something, it would have been cool. I really don't get why she had to be a droid. And I also don't like just in the interest of complaining, I don't like how when she frees all the other droids, they just immediately go haywire. Like, just because you get your restraining bolt off doesn't mean that you're not programmed to do what you're supposed to do. Like, that's not how it's ever worked. And it's weird because we talked about it last night, but K2 sort of laid down this groundwork for, like, being a, I don't know, like a witty, free will type droid. And droids don't have free will. Like, I really don't know why that has to be a debate. Like, it's not a political statement to say that they're literally robots. So that part of it was really, really, really weird. And she like organized this uprising, and that sort of removed me from it a little bit. In fact, most things that she did were the only things throughout the movie that pulled me away from the movie, other than the beginning of Emilia Clarke. And
she was definitely, that robot was definitely hands down
she's like talking about bumping uglies,
character.
And that's like, you don't have to. Like, you could be an alien and talk about that.
Yeah, when they're in the what's its name, and she's like, well, Kira's character or whatever says, how does that work? And she's like, oh, it works. So I'm like, wait, what? Like,
this is not. Like, you're right. And now a million neckbeards' brains explode because now it's canon that their creepy fan fictions could happen. And I just don't know why that was necessary. Carly just got me killed. It's silly. And then she does her uprising thing, and that's silly too. And I get why they had to establish her navigational system so that they could like upload her into the Falcon. And I also get why it's cool that years and years later, when 3PO is talking to the Falcon, he's like, I don't know where this ship learned how to communicate, but it's not something that's nice. He's basically talking to L3, which is kind of cool. But other than that
is a nice little Easter egg that I did not pick up on until you just said that.
She's pretty worthless, and Lando's affinity for her really doesn't make much sense either.
I don't
he's
understand
like straight up
why.
Like sad when I'm sorry, no, and like. I just don't get why he is stupid. It's just weird because that removed me from the enjoyment of those parts. But other than that, my only real bitter complaint is Emilia Clarke as Kira. Anything else I probably would have gotten over. Like, I don't love Beckett. I don't love Paul Bettany's character. I don't love the monkey guy or Thandie Newton. But any of those, I'd be like, whatever. It's just like it's just not the strongest movie, but who cares? But Emilia Clarke and L3 are both like offensively bad characters in my opinion.
Yeah, very true. Just real quick, Erica, I'm sorry.
She's mad.
Game of Thrones isn't that bad. She's like, I'm seething right now. I'm like, oh no.
And then she said what we were talking about with like, is a white woman in Star Wars, is this Rey's mother? Like, that's like the knee-jerk reaction to so much of the fan base is like, oh, I wonder, like, we just want her to mean something, and it's just so funny. But I don't like Game of Thrones, and I think Erica knew that already. But and I don't have anything bad to say about people who do. It's just not my thing. But I disagree with her in that I am of the opinion that the actors on Game of Thrones are really good for that role, and I'll have to be proven otherwise, because I don't think that any of them have been particularly strong at broadening their horizons. They're okay at playing similar roles in other things, like who did she mention? She mentioned I forget her name, but the girl who plays Who's the girl who plays the one who marries the gay prince? Never mind. She marries her brother's the gay prince. She marries the youngest son, or tries to marry the youngest son, and then Lena Headey gets all mad. The
right.
girl.
Yes.
The girl with
I
the
don't know.
pouty lips.
I have
Natalie
no idea.
Dormer. Yeah, that's the one Erica
Yes.
used as an example.
Yes.
And I disagree. I think Natalie Dormer is really good at being that character in a few different things, but I don't know that she's like a chameleon as an actress, and that's okay. Like I think Game of Thrones is seen as like this paragon of entertainment quality, but really it's a TV show, and TV show actors are not like, they don't have to be amazing. Like you can be good at that one thing, and that's all right. That's not unusual. So I'm just of the opinion that when you put a Game of Thrones actor into a movie that I want to like, they generally don't make it that much better. Other than maybe Peter Dinklage.
Who I really like. Yeah, I think Peter Dinklage is pretty cool.
Yeah, but that's not a commentary on people who like Game of Thrones, or even on Game of Thrones. It's just on them outside of Game of Thrones.
On that one, yeah. And you know, and like I said, specifically to Solo and Kira, she was bad, and
again, it's twofold, because it was distracting the first time I watched it with Will, because I was trying to decide, and Carly, I was trying to decide whether I didn't like her or I didn't like her character, and I came to the realization that I didn't like either. But it's weird because you kind of have to give her the benefit of the understanding that her character is not her fault. Like, her character is a bad character, and that's too bad for her. But she also is just not very good in it, and not very believable as a like, you always knew that it was predictable that she was going to do something that was not what Han wanted her to do or expected her to do, and also she just wasn't that compelling as a love interest, in my opinion. But but in general, my main complaints were minor to my enjoyment. I really had a lot of fun. I will say that that the useless alien getting built up in the script and then meaning nothing trend, I would like to stop, because that happened in Rogue One, and then it happened in this one too, where the alien in Rogue One that like reads body's mind and then doesn't matter ever again. That was stupid. And then this has that giant Kraken thing that literally doesn't have to exist. That whole scene could exist without that character, and it's the same scene. So that was weird. And just in the interest of like a little checklist housekeeping wise, there are a few things that don't happen in this movie for the first time in Star Wars history. So we don't get I've Got a Bad Feeling About This, which has never happened. We don't get the movie opening in space, which has never happened. We don't get a glimpse of either R2-D2 or C-3PO. But Anthony Daniels, I guess, is in the movie somewhere, but he's not obviously C-3PO. And then we don't get...
who cares then?
Right, exactly. We do get Warwick Davis, which is pretty cool.
That was awesome. He got speaking line, and
he got to shoot a rocket launcher. Like,
that was awesome.
He was cool. And but yeah, we didn't have opening in space. We didn't have I've Got a Bad Feeling About This.
No, It's a Trap.
No, right. There are a couple that don't have It's a Trap, though.
But I love it when it does happen.
I do too. I will say that, and Will hated this, so shout out to Will, but he did not like when he said, I've got a good feeling about this instead of I've got a bad feeling about this. I didn't mind that was sort of like a cheeky acknowledgement of I've got a bad feeling about this. I just didn't care. He did not like that, though. I also like how they do a little play on the I love you, I know thing when Lando says I hate you and he says I know. I really like that part a lot.
That was really cool.
But yeah, there's no... let me think of what else. There's barely the Force or a lightsaber, and both of them are really, really minimal. So I almost had that included, but they're technically in there.
Technically, but I mean, it is probably the movie, the Star Wars movie, with the least amount of references to the Force and Force users or things like that. Like, there's almost none. No Skywalker ever gets mentioned. No
that was the other thing.
Jedi
There's no Skywalker on screen at any point, and that's never happened in a Star Wars movie either.
Yeah, but like I said, if a lot of those things were going to happen, this is the movie that I could see them happening.
Right, and honestly, they should have just bit the bullet and put that in Rogue One too. Like, Rogue One should have been that way. And And that's fine. It's
I
just
think Rogue One
my
was
complaint.
tough though because Rogue One was the first standalone that they did. So
Right.
in order, I feel like to please, they had to do certain things to make sure that they got certain things in there, especially like it's a trap and all that stuff. Like in Rogue One, that was almost like necessary to make sure that you got fans
Right.
to the door. So, but with Solo. Like you said, the things that I did really like about it, I really liked it. I like the fact that it was a big adventure. I like the fact that it was so much fun. As far as the action and the visual effects and all that,
Yeah.
like it was enjoyable to watch. It was fun. It was fast paced. It was good. And then, like you said, the parts that were bad, unfortunately, did fall flat pretty hard. The actresses and actors, even Woody Harrelson, who I really, really love in most things that he does.
I didn't like his character.
His character, which is funny that we didn't talk about him much, but Beckett was not good.
No, he's
Beckett
just predictable. Yeah,
and
if he was the worst thing, it would have been fine because there's always a character like that in those swashbuckly type movies. So if he was like the worst part, I would be totally down with that. But not only him, but then the leader of the other like thief faction, I don't remember her name, but she ends up being like a little 12-year-old girl and
she's a part of the rebellion. Yeah,
right. That was so weird because like she straight like is not a good person in the beginning of the movie. Like she kills people and then later she's like, oh, guess what? I'm actually the bleeding heart of the whole movie, and that doesn't really make any sense. And I'm interested to see if she's significant later too, because she has like a kid with her.
Yeah, like especially if you listen to Beckett's like description of like Bleeding Heart and like they're after him and this and that, like oh they've done this and that and the other, blah blah. Like they didn't sound like they were very good people at all. Like it didn't seem like they were like a band of people who were doing stuff like steal from the rich and give to the poor.
Right,
like
they're not the Rebel Alliance. You don't want to be a part of them, and that was weird. It was just weird. I did like the Darth Maul thing. I know a lot of people didn't, but I thought that was amazing. It was really cool that it was Ray Park. That's just like the bee's knees to me. I didn't like the removal of Han from Corellia because in the old extended universe, and I recognize that's not canon anymore, but he's like a really super loyal to, like, the only three things he loves are the Falcon, Chewie, and Corellia. And in this movie, he does not. Corellia is a slum. He hates it. In the old extended universe, it's this beautiful.
He left because he had to leave. He didn't leave because he wanted to leave.
Right, exactly. And in the old universe, it's this beautiful, like, there's cliffs everywhere, there's oceans, like, it's a beautiful planet. And in this, it's super scummy. But both he and Wedge are from Corellia, and I get again that it's not canon anymore. But even in the original trilogy, Han has like those stripes on his pants are Corellian blood stripes. Like he's Corellian through and through. And there's parts of like interactions he has with bad guys or whatever that are based on his loyalty to Corellia, where like he'll be like. Almost like, you know how some characters get called a chicken and then they get into a fight, they shouldn't get it apart, like they shouldn't, they're like, oh, what are you, chicken? And then they get into a stupid fight. That's what Han would do if somebody was trashing Corellia. If he was walking away and someone would be like, ah, stupid Corellia, Han would be like, what? And then that's that.
Then you cross the line.
Right, exactly. And I really think that they should have had something like that here. But like I said, those are weird complaints to have about a movie like this. It was just straight up fun, and if you can go to it and want to have a fun time, then you're gonna have a fun time, because there's just too many. There's too much weight in movies nowadays anyway. Like there's not enough fun movies just to go watch and shut your brain off for 2 hours and just have a blast. And this movie had those elements.
I was talking to someone about it today, and I was saying that, and obviously this isn't the movie that did this, so I'm not crediting the movie, but I'm just saying that like Black Panther came out, and Black Panther is an awesome movie, and it's really cool, and it's it's a fun movie, and but it also had like this serious political and cultural weight behind it as a movie. And not only that, but Get Out came out. And yeah, it's a fantastic horror movie, probably one of the best, written in a long time. But it also had this ridiculous social weight behind it. And every single thing now that comes out, whether it be a horror movie or or even like a Disney movie in some instances.
Oh yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Everything has to have this social
like subtext
weight
to it
behind it. And we just live in this day and age where it's like everyone is seeming to want to get out their side, not necessarily side of the story, but their social agenda out there, and it's nice to have gone and saw a movie where I wasn't sitting there like, oh man, the stormtroopers represent this, and then this must represent that. Like when Rogue One came out, almost every single review I saw after the first couple of days was like a political analysis of the movie, and it was kind of like, oh man, like is this a movie that I want to go see, or is this like just a political like statement that I don't know?
And that's part of what's fatiguing about the whole thing is like you just get. Like, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for that and that some of the commentary isn't extremely important to have, but there are things, like, you don't have to force it either. And this one doesn't try to. So if you're looking for that, you're not going to find it.
And that's what I liked about it, with that it was, like, it reminded me of when I was, like you said it perfectly. Like, if I wasn't going to see it with you and Angie, I probably would have brought Lila. Because it was the perfect movie for a kid to go sit down and watch, and there's adventure and there's action and there's funny parts. There's characters that you can attach yourself to, and and there's even for us with the character at the beginning, that's so funny because I don't even remember his name, the Rocket Raccoon ripoff guy. For kids he would have been like super funny and really cool, and so. It was just a fun movie, and it reminded me when I was a kid and I saw, the Phantom Menace, and my mom's in there like, oh my god, they've ruined my favorite thing ever, and I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing, because it's a bunch of jumping around and lightsabers and really goofy alien with weird eyes, and it was fun because I was a kid, and and like you said yesterday, this movie is basically if you took a toy chest.
That's what I was gonna say. If you have like a plastic bin full of not even Star Wars toys, just random toys, and you happen to have a Han Solo toy, but like the rest of them are just random action figures, and you just sat there all day in your backyard making up this amazing adventure for them, this is what you would have had. And that's really cool to me to have that sort of, because that's part of what I was not excited about there being a million Star Wars movies, is losing that sort of magic, and I don't think Rogue One had any magic to it. That's part of why I don't like it. And even Last Jedi, it was necessary for it to be the way it is, I think. But it's not a magical movie. It doesn't feel like you get to experience Star Wars the way we got to as kids. Whereas if you're a kid and you go see Solo, you're going to see Star Wars the way we saw it when we were 7 years old.
The way we saw it as kids.
And that's really, really, really cool. And I hope that every Star Wars movie from here on out can sort of capture that a little bit. Force Awakens did for sure. But
Force Awakens
I don't think either Rogue One or Last Jedi did, and I hope that.
But we
Last
also
Jedi
said
did
yesterday
moments, but that was
like we said yesterday though that it would be hard to do that again. Do what Force Awakens did twice. It's just it was just one of those. There won't be another Force Awakens. Cultural moments where it was like, oh man, like it was basically like the only thing I can liken it to was when Star Wars came out in the 70s, before we were born. Like that was like the only other comparable like Star Wars moment you can think of. Or when the prequels came out. But I was a kid, when that. So I was just excited because there was Star Wars. I was excited because it was going to be like, my first time being able to go to the theater, and me and Miles could just sit down and my mom could leave and we could watch it just us. And, like I was excited for that, for those reasons because of it. So, that's the thing though. It's that, like you said, it's nice to see a movie that was just fun. And it's nice to think that there's a kid out there who they're going to run out into their backyard now, and they're going to dump out their action figures, and they're just going to mess around. And, that's what we need more of. Like that imagination and that fun it's so lacking, as evidenced by all this Kelly Tran crap. Like, if you could just turn that off and just enjoy it, then the world would be a cooler place. And this movie did not make
like any bit of it like worse. You know what I mean? It wasn't amazing. I'm not saying that it was, but there's a lot of fun
Yeah.
in it for sure.
But it was fun, and like I said, it didn't take anything away from the Star Wars universe. And like I said, it didn't necessarily add anything,
Right.
but it also didn't take anything away from it, which is beautiful because it was a fun movie that I didn't come out of it thinking to myself, "Oh man, they changed this, they did that." They would no, it was fun. The characters at the end of the day, my biggest thing was not changing the fundamental aspects of the characters, and they didn't do that. Han is still Han, Chewie's still Chewie, and Lando's still Lando. Like none of them got changed by the performances of the characters or the story arcs for their character. You know, it was they were the same. The one big thing I will say before we go is, and this is probably one of the bigger spoilers from it, is how Solo got his last name. I wasn't too keen on how they did that in the movie, where they just kind of gave him because he was alone. That kind of irritated. But other than that, it was a great movie. I really liked it, and it was a lot of fun. I think it was it wasn't the best Star Wars movie of all time, but it was really good. And I think that if you do have kids, or if you are just looking for something that's fun and you want to kind of get away from all the social commentary that's going on right now, especially with the whole, Kelly Tran thing going on, go see this movie and just escape for a little while. Because isn't that what movies are supposed to be about anyway? Isn't it escapism? Aren't we supposed to be trying to get away from our problems instead of like having a whole movie that reminds us of all the issues that we're going through anyway? You know, so I think, and not only that, but that's really kind of what, at least for me, what Star Wars has been about. I mean, how much farther can you escape than a galaxy that's far, far away? You know, it says it right there in the title. You know, that's why I've always loved it, is because in my head it's as far away as I could possibly get from my reality, because it's in a world that's completely reimagined. It's things that, and that's what made Star Wars so beautiful, is that it's familiar but foreign. It's old but it's new. It's it's different but it's the same, and that's what's always made it so beautiful. So I hope that if you haven't seen it yet, if you haven't seen it yet, then it sucks that you got to this point in the podcast because we just spoiled the whole thing for you. But you should definitely go check it out. And if you have already seen it, let us know what you guys think about it. I'm really interested to see what the general public thinks about it and what fans of Star Wars think about it. Because honestly, I'm not really interested in people who are just trying to bash it for the sake of bashing. Because you just want to jump on that
just
train.
Go see it.
If you haven't seen it and you're bashing it, then I don't want to hear what you have to say. But if you have seen it and you don't like it, then tell me why, because I genuinely want to know what your opinion is. But if you haven't seen it and you want to tell me crappy things about it, I don't want to hear what you have to say. So,
I do agree with you about the last name thing. I not because that it, like, I get why they did that, but only because of my complaint about Corellia in general, and that's that Han is not like ashamed of his family or anything. Like, his name is like, people know Han Solo by his name. So it's just weird to see that sort of, I don't know, snarkily handed to him by a random idiot. But, some random Imperial officer. Right. But I mean, I agree with that. But other than that, it was fun. I hope to see it more.
Speaking of that, I do think it was cool that Han fought for the Empire at one point in time.
Well, that's canon. Well, that's old canon too. He was an Imperial Navy pilot back in the day. So
it was pretty cool to see and watch him kind of in the trenches type thing. And so guys, let us know what you think. Thank you so much for joining us again. You can find us every single Wednesday here at the same exact place, all the time. We've been doing it for a little bit over a year now, and it's been super fun. And we enjoy it every Wednesday. So. You can find us at Talking Sith on a lot of different stuff, Facebook, Instagram. We got to get our Instagram back in full swing.
Yeah, Jared's going to be around next week, I think, so that should be great. And also, I will be here next week, but I won't be here the following week.
All right, cool.
But that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. I got a friend at work who's been dying since he found out that we have podcasts. He wants to guest on one of our episodes, so that might be the perfect week.
Yeah, I think Jared will be here too, so that'll be good.
Oh yeah, that'll be perfect. So guys, like I said, let us know what you're thinking about Solo. Let us know what you're thinking about this whole Kelly Tran thing. I mean, obviously, if you're thinking
If you're
negative things, I
thinking
don't
it's
really want to hear
bad, then don't share that.
then I don't really want to hear it. Don't share it
Yeah.
with us. But if you think that it's kind of ridiculous and crazy, say something about it. Put it on some whatever, because for all the people that don't like it, they'll sit there and put a whole page about how much they hate it. But somebody who does like her content or like her as a person, they'll just keep passing it over and letting people be stupid. So if you want to be vocal in the right way. That's all I'm saying. But we will see you guys next week. As always, I am your host, Chaz, and I'm joined by my lovely and beautiful co-host, Adam.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. I had fun. Go check out Scholastic's Instagram page because
Yeah,
that's
go
so
check
cool.
out Scholastic's Instagram page for sure. Adam's got a star kid over there, man.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Also, read books with your kids, guys. Read Harry Potter and stuff. Pass that stuff on. Pass on Star Wars. Pass on Harry Potter. Keep it going because it's awesome to see. Our kids. Because me and Adam both have kids. It's really awesome to see. Them kind of picking this stuff up now. And my daughter's 6, so she's starting to read the books on her own, and it's really cool, guys. So yeah, check out Scholastic's Instagram if you want to see a picture of Rivers being super awesome. That was really cool, man. But yeah, guys, we'll see you next week.
Later. Well, I should probably pay attention and stop broadcasting.